companies have no idea what it is their customers want. Which, to be fair to the companies, is a problem about as old as commerce itself, really, and one that provides an excellent opportunity for a bit of gatekeeping. After all, we, the consumer, want good products, and the companies want to earn money, so the best way for them to earn money would simply be to provide us with good products, right? Well, kind of, yes, but it is unfortunately a hint more complicated than that. Let's begin with the first statement. Companies don't know what their customers want? That sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? After all, every website you visit sells every last singular scrap of your data to all of those companies. Surely they know precisely what you want by now, right? Well, that's the problem too. Too much data, and too much data that is difficult to analyze as well, leading often also to a very skewed data set. If a company gains most of its customer data via Twitter, for example, well, you get stuff like the gay enchilada, because the company making it thinks, this LGBTQ inclusion stuff is really, really popular, so how about we make homo a stars? And then they get a massive backlash because it turns out that South America isn't actually quite as on board with this as Twitter led them to believe. There are a ton of examples of this, like the infamous Gillette campaign, where a razor company decided to lecture their customers about what horrible people they were. Absolutely brilliant. Or Starbucks race together coffee cups. My god, even the most inept of marketing troglodytes should have been able to cast one glance at that and go, no, are you insane? We will be dragged through the streets for this. And yet, it happened. It was a real campaign presented by a company expecting head pats for the initiative. Or what about the SAS, a commercial? SAS, Scandinavian Airline System, having a black man say, "We know better than our Viking ancestors." Yes, tell your Scandinavian customer base that they have no culture and that they have stolen it all from other people. I'll encourage them to get aboard your airplanes, tut sweet, no doubt about it. Or underwear commercials. Bearing in mind, sexy underwear is supposed to, badumtish, make you look and feel sexy. And their advert has a bunch of, well, this isn't even just fat women. Half of these are obese women, traipsing down the streets with their flabs hanging out. Oh yes, I am sure that most women will look at this and go, yes, this is what I aspire to look like in this attractive underwear. I could go on for quite some time, but I believe the point has already been hammered quite thoroughly home. And you might be wondering, how on God's good earth does this even happen? Well, as mentioned, social media is a large part of it. The thing is, the idea of gathering actual, actionable, solid intelligence from the consumer base is a relatively new idea, because it's only been available to companies for a very short amount of time. The internet, social media, and the ability to gather large quantities of user data has allowed companies to try and analyze it and come up with the perfect trends to chase. The problem is that, again, the data tends to come from very specific sources, which leads to a highly skewed point of view. Whereas what the companies should actually be looking at is the variety of information. Instead of trawling through all of their data points for a common uniting thread, e.g. whichever group is currently shouting the loudest on Twitter, the company should instead be trying to identify trends, multiple trends, mind you, and multiple points of interest. This is best illustrated by an old and oft-used story, which you have probably heard if you've ever been interested in marketing. The story of the perfect tomato sauce. Allow me to skip over all of the dilly-dally nonsense and the details and get straight to the point. A man was hired to develop the perfect tomato sauce for pasta, because the company wanted to sell their pasta to as many people as possible with the best product possible. Duh. So far, so obvious. And this should be easy enough, right? You get 1,000 people and you give them each 100 bowls of pasta with 100 different tomato sauces. And then, once you've gathered all of that data and massaged it a little bit, you'll come out with a happy medium, a perfect pasta sauce. Except, of course, that's not what happened. What turned out to actually be the case is that one person liked a chunky tomato sauce with nice pieces of whole tomato in them. Other people absolutely loathed the idea and wanted perfectly minced tomato sauces. Others wanted a medium tomato sauce. Others wanted it to be a bit more spicy. Others to be a bit more mild. Others wanted more spices, more different tastes in their sauce, and others wanted it to just be plain tomato, and so on and so on and so on. Until the researcher arrived at the conclusion that there is no such thing as a perfect tomato sauce, only perfect sauces. To put it a bit more broadly, a product made for everyone is a product made for no one, as it will inescapably be a bland, boring, uninteresting mess. Now, that is of course not to say that you can't have products with broad appeal, as we have seen in video gaming and movies and television and entertainment and so on. You can have a cultural phenomenon like Star Wars, but as it turns out, as thoroughly demonstrated by the last 3 movies, people want Star Wars from their Star Wars. And if you instead give them a Luke Skywalker that rejects everything his character has ever valued or protected, you're gonna get quite a backlash for it. And that's the important part in concerns to gatekeeping as well. Now, bear in mind, even if Star Wars receives the backlash it so justly deserved, it will still take a very long time before that actually translates into anything. These companies are ginormous entities. It takes them years to absorb this information and make eventual adjustments, and it will happen very slowly at first, like, for example, Netflix, a remarkably woke company informing their reviewers that they are not to drag real-life politics into their stories about zombies. Quite the U-turn there. And perhaps even more difficult to turn is the fact that there are a lot of people inside of these companies that have made up their own, usually quite political opinions. We've talked about this on multiple occasions already in the Gatekeeping series, where the reason why these people try to politicize the hobbies is because they have a greater good. I've been referring to them as outsiders, but perhaps anti-fan is an even better term. And we have a recent lovely example of that in the upcoming He-Man series. As we get an insight into some of the thoughts of the creative team, uncreative team. But a big hurdle when you're introducing a new character to a line of so many well-established characters is they are bound to be outsiders, and harder to accept as canon, at least for a while, he says. Basically admitting that, we couldn't make an interesting character in the Masters of the Universe canon, and he'd be undoubtedly seen as an outsider because we'd need to force our politics into him, and the fanbase would reject him. And so instead, they decided to race swap Grayskull. Why? Not for any story reasons, not because of any additions to his character or changes to the lore, the setting, the universe, or anything like that, but simply because now a black man has a role of prominence. This is a pure my politics kind of decision. It does not take the universe into consideration at all. It simply says, well, I want a specific skin color in my story because I'm a racist. Therefore, I am going to do it to an established character. And to further hammer home this point, we have the second part of the message. She was initially created as a new character. It was my idea to dig into the lore and raise up a character who had a small appearance but a strong following. In other words, you see the character off to the left here, the dark-skinned character, which stands out like a sore thumb in comparison to all the others. Yes, that is another race-swapped character, because they figured they couldn't make an actually interesting new character, and so they took another character that had a strong following, in other words, something that the fans actually wanted to see, and race-swapped that one as well, taking her name and stamping that onto their own racial character. And think about what that means for a second. That means that someone in charge of the creative parts of the Masters of the Universe decided, right, we have a character that we know is popular, that we know people want to see, and so we are going to remove that character, but keep her name, the only thing about her, and then we are going to take our character that we admit nobody wants to see because we just aren't very good at making characters, being the massive bigots that we are, and slap the name of the popular character onto our unpopular character. Why? Because now she's the correct race, and that seems to be the only thing they care about. In other words, you have the creative team making an executive decision to reject the popular choice that the fans want and exchange it with the one nobody asked for, because politics. Before any of these companies can be turned around into making actual quality content for the specific fanbase, these people will have to be removed first. And in a corporation, that is a long process, as they will have to be fired sideways or upwards to be gotten out of the way. So we can have the characters on the left and the center instead of the one on the right, which is the classical modern-day interpretation of a strong female character. In other words, a man with probably a shitty personality. Unsurprisingly, this has not gone over particularly well with the fans, most of whom are now in a bit of a wait-and-see mode, whilst clutching their hands going, please, please, please don't be crap. I mean, after all, Netflix doesn't necessarily mean awful. Everyone thought that Witcher would be garbage, and I certainly don't think The Witcher was a particularly great TV show, but Henry Cavill absolutely saved that show. Put any other man in the role of The Witcher, and I do not think it would have received a very good reception at all. And then you've got the Castlevania series, which is also pretty darn good, though the female characters' personalities got awfully grating awfully quickly, as once more, the modern-day interpretation of the strong female character tends to be conflated quite readily with simply aggressively ungrateful bitch. I particularly remember one scene where Alucard is specifically summoned to rescue a village that is under attack from night creatures. When he arrives, the village is about to be attacked and overrun by night creatures again. Several large, horrible monstrosities opposed by like 4 or 5 villagers with pitchforks. The fight would have been over in 2 seconds, and then the rest of the village would have been eaten. Alucard bounces into the scene, dispatches the monsters, and then turns to the villagers, probably expecting at the very least that, oh god, thank you. We sent for you. Did the messenger come? Did he get back all right? Instead, he is met with a, who the hell are you? Who asked for your help? If you're willing to help, we'll accept it, but don't think we'll be grateful or anything. Essentially. By, of course, the strong female character that leads the village. The same character, by the way, who sent for Alucard in the first place. And again, this is where the fan backlash is so very important. The only way we can send a good message to these companies and be heard is by continuing to comment on these things. One of the things I do on this channel, of course. Point out the good. That's a valuable thing as well, not merely slamming the bad, but pointing out the good as well. The plot with the two twins, for example, that was a very cool plotline. Bit obvious, but still pretty damn awesome. In the case of The Witcher, Henry Cavill deserves all the praise he can get, as he seems to be the kind of actor we need in geek media. I know I'm gushing over him far too frequently, but he is a nerd who does nerd stuff, who does nerd TV shows, and actually sends the kind of passion and interest into those productions that they so desperately need in a world where The Witcher, Star Wars, etc. are all simply viewed as corporatist cash cows by an anonymous board of investors somewhere atop their ivory tower. But never forget, they are listening. Most of these people simply want to make money, and they try to make money doing what apparently is popular at the time. Right now, the mainstream media is quite insistent that wokeism is the future, diversity is our strength, and so, naturally, the companies will follow suit, even as they fall flat on their faces again and again and again and again. The message is getting through, as again we saw of the Netflix ban on political talk when it came to Resident Evil, which was of course inevitable in and of itself. I even found one mention saying that in the midst of a global pandemic, talking about politics in a zombie apocalypse is more important than ever. Ah yes, the Voldemort virus and the zombie apocalypse. Basically the same thing. Stay vocal, and we will continue to see the tide slowly shift. Now, I'll wrap it up there. Honestly, this is more of a kind of in the middle video where I have to lay out some of the groundwork for the further ideas, as I'm still pondering the idea of how to try and reclaim a setting, and I think this is key to it. Bear in mind that the corporations do not own the setting. Now, legally, of course they do. Disney owns Star Wars, but it is the fans who determine what is and is not Star Wars. And at the end of the day, if the company wants to earn money of their billion-dollar investments, they will have to abide by the fans' rulings. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.